Very good morning to you if you're just joining us, and let's recap now on some of what the President told the World Economic Forum, attended by 25 heads of state, and I imagine that most of them are doing that virtually, and we also understand that there are over 2,000 businesses and I suspect business people and civil society who are also participants at this year's World Economic Forum. I'm not alone in studio. I am with our business reporter, Kopano Gumbi, who's going to take us through some of what the President had to say. Kopano, remind us about what the key highlights of his speech was before we drill deeper into some of the interesting areas.
Absolutely. Well, I think the President touched on the key factors that are affecting our economy and global economy, which is the vaccine rollout, and how poorer countries and poorer continents like Africa can get access to the vaccine, which is key. He touched on vaccine nationalization, saying that a lot of more wealthy countries in the West are essentially bulk buying the vaccine and hoarding it. He used those words. Indeed. In order to protect their economy.
True. Vaccine nationalism is what the President highlights as a major concern, and is asking for developed nations to say, release the excess vaccines. This is now the amounts that you are not going to use. Release them to us.
Absolutely, and I think it's also important to note that we need to release them at a price that all African countries can afford, which has been very prominent, a prominent discussion that's happening right now around how much these vaccines are going to cost us and when we get access to them.
And then, importantly, the person that the President was speaking to, or should I say the program director, the first question to the President once he concluded his speech, very early on, touching on the issues of energy insecurity in South Africa. How did the President respond as far as trying to reassure the nations of the world that not only is South Africa open for business, but South Africa is now actively exploring other options apart from the monopoly that has been Eskom over the years, providing security to the country?
And that's been a key concern for many businesses, and not just business. If you think back to the ratings agencies, that's the #1 concern that they have around South Africa, which is energy security. The President's saying now that they are now trying really hard to roll out the alternative energy sources, and some companies would be able to self-generate, which has been a key point that the miners specifically have been asking if they can have access to that. The President, in his economic recovery plan, did outline that they've committed to consistency in power supply over the next 2 years. Now, that was in October of 2020, so we are in the first year where we should have consistent energy supply. But yet, last year we had some of the darkest days ever recorded since we started load shedding.
And you've got to remember that very early on in January, we actually opened 2021 with darkness, I think, late in the evening and all the way into the morning. And then at some point, we actually had to go into load shedding as we know it, even during the day. Then, of course, he touched on South Africa releasing its economic reform policy towards the end of the year. And he mentions some of the key sectors that are not only going to go under restructuring, but also reforms. The agricultural sector, the mining sector, very important. Why do you think he touched on these, not forgetting the issue of infrastructure rollout?
Well, agriculture has been touted as the job creator for the continent, essentially, because we are so rich in minerals and resources and land that we could really create several thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs in agriculture. Mining is as well, you know, as I said, we are very rich in natural resources, and so mining could be a huge drive for job creation. He touched on manufacturing and infrastructure development. Those are a little bit more challenging in South Africa. We understand the manufacturing industry has been contracting for the last decade, if not more. Infrastructure rollout it's very capital intensive. It needs a heavy investment, and our economy is on its knees right now. So it should be interesting to see.
Then the ports of entry, that was also an interesting element that he touched on. including the roads. Why do you think he felt it necessary to go there?
Road infrastructure is key, especially on the continent, because we don't have as much rail and aeroplane infrastructure as necessary. Road infrastructure is critical for us to move our goods finished from here to there and for them to bring their products to us to trade.
And that, to perhaps just touch on what you are saying, and I'm sorry to cut in, I think that element you just spoke about, road infrastructure and being key to us delivering goods to our neighbors and vice versa, it could not be any more clearer than towards the end of the year and early January, so to speak, as a result of the congestion that we saw on our borders.
Absolutely. In Beit Bridge and in the border between South Africa and Mozambique, there was huge congestion, days of trucks lined up, and that just goes to show how, you know, we really need to work on seamlessly integrating our road networks and our transport between countries. Otherwise, the Africa Free Trade Agreement really won't take off as we hope it does.
And that's the area I want us to conclude on, that the President mentioning that the Africa Free Trade Area Agreement, that was switched on from the 1st of January, he said, and the continent is going to see not just the trading of African countries with each other, but also it's going to boost manufacturing and industrialization.
That is the hope. The African Union has done their research and they say that we would have a combined GDP of around $2.5 trillion US, which is huge. Imagine. It could make us one of the biggest players in the world as a continent if this free trade.
And why is this? He mentions that we have 1.2 billion people on the African continent.
And a majority of them are young.
There we go. There we go. All right. And yeah, I think it's good that we end on the Africa Free Trade Area, because the President calling it or characterizing it as revolutionary. It's going to be a sea change of how the continent has operated over the years. If this is successful, as you say, it's probably going to be one of the largest markets that the world has ever seen.
That's
All
right.
right. Kopano Gumbi, thank you very much for joining us, our business reporter here, just helping us to recap some of what the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, has told the World Economic Forum, which is starting today, and many of the participants doing so virtually as a result of the pandemic. Well,